You're watching news now from Fox. Right now, some of our viewers will see a quick commercial break. And for the rest of our audience, we're taking a live look at New York City. Now, in New York City, typically thousands and thousands of people gather in Times Square for New Year's Eve, gather in the clubs, filling restaurants. But of course, things are a little bit differently this year. People are actually leaving New York City to celebrate, while some establishments are still working to host celebrations in the city while adhering to the city's curfew. So let's check in with news now from Fox's Regina Gonzalez for the latest.
Hello, everyone. You're watching News Now from Fox. I'm Regina Gonzalez, here to talk New Year's Eve celebrations, looking a little bit different this year. To do that, I am joined by Murillo Rosendo. He is the principal of a hospitality group in New York City. Murillo, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about One Cut and your job, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I work with One Cut Hospitality. That's my hospitality endeavor. That we were, pre-pandemic, we were assisting all of nightlife, all the clubs, in their volume sales. So now, with the COVID restrictions, we've repivoted to assisting restaurants in their volume and COVID restrictions compliance. And this summer, I was fortunate enough to work with some of the highest grossing locations in the East Coast. So I was working with Baby Brasa, restaurant in the East and the West Village, and I was also working with Profundo, the highest grossing location in the East Coast for this duration. So that's been an interesting time this year. Repivoting from what we're so used to, the nightlife, into a little bit of day life.
Well, everybody is looking for nightlife, especially on celebrations like New Year's Eve. What are you used to seeing on New Year's Eve in New York City?
So in New York City, we're used to seeing every one of our friends always texting us to fly into New York. This year, we're seeing a lot of people actually flying out of the city. They're flying out into Miami and into Tulum, and there's a lot of party planning going on there. Obviously, with a lot less restrictions than we have here in the city. So Times Square has been a much different scene. We've seen a lot less tourists, a lot less people out in general. So that's been very different and interesting, really, to see. New York not being the epicenter of attention for this time.
Exactly. Well, the celebration will still go on in Times Square. It's going to be virtual. Crowds are not allowed. We actually just heard from the NYPD about that. So, Rillo, as far as nightlife and celebrating, what can people do New Year's Eve with these restrictions still in place? Do they have options?
Yeah, so as far as nightlife, I would say not so much. We've again repivoted to day life. So we're really switching on to evening events. So really around 4, but again keeping the restrictions up to 10 p.m. curfew. So Magic Hour is one of the best locations to celebrate. You have a really great view of Times Square. You can obviously get a hotel there as well, and celebrate. You have a 9 p.m. champagne toast. And again, closing at 10 p.m. and as well as Profundo will be open. That's a very beautiful location. They'll have a DJ. All restrictions are in place, mask mandates as well. And that celebration will go until 10 p.m.
So really, people are trying to have events pre-curfew.
Yes, pre-curfew, and again, creating that dining experience because of the restrictions within New York. Obviously, to be anywhere, you do have to have a dining option.
So really, being in the hospitality industry in New York City under these tough restrictions posed by the coronavirus, what advice do you have to hospitality workers who may be struggling, maybe out of work, not only in New York, but in these other big cities with similar restrictions?
Yes, it definitely has been a difficult time, and for me, I've been very fortunate enough to still find work within the hospitality field for those restaurants that were able to stay open. But for my fellow hospitality workers, I want to have them make sure that they're receiving the maximum unemployment assistance and relief programs in place. But I've also seen a lot of my friends who are writers, actors, and artists, dive into their creative side and in their creative endeavors. And I think that's the best we can do for our mental state while we weather out the storm.
Murillo, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Yes, definitely would love to wish everyone a happy new year, and hope everyone stay safe with their family and friends.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us on News Now from Fox. You have a happy new year yourself.
Thank you.
All right, just in case you wanted a reminder of everything we went through this year in 2020, here's a look